The Drummer and the Great Mountain, a podcast where we share effective tips and practices for working with adults ADD, ADHD in a natural, effective way without the use of medications. Each episode, join me, your host, Batman Saram, along with the author of The Drummer and the Great Mountain, Michael Joseph Ferguson. Join Michael and myself in an interactive discussion of sharing our stories as we journey together in transforming what can be the gift of being what we call hunter types. This podcast is intended to be your audio companion to the book written by Michael, who joins me each episode where we both will strive to foster dialogue, give you our personal insights, and share both of our experiences on this similar path that we are all on. Our intention and hope is that along with the book, this podcast gives you an additional perspective as you listen to us delve deeper into each chapter of the book to give you even more tools to go along with what it is that you are reading. Visit us at drummerandthegreatmountain.com to purchase the book and look for more tools, tips, and updates, as well as giving us feedback on this podcast. Join our growing global community of creative types, entrepreneurs, and out-of-the-box thinkers on our shared journey. Welcome to The Drummer and the Great Mountain podcast.
Welcome, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. I'm your host, Michael Joseph Ferguson. How are you all doing? On today's episode, we will be discussing the topic, starting with the end in mind. This is an essential habit for us hunter types to get into, to keep ourselves motivated and maintain our clarity as we're working on projects. And it is to avoid the really common challenge that us hunter types have of impulsively starting a project and then getting lost and then throwing in the towel. So today's episode is going to be discussing how do we best define what our goal looks like so that we can build that habit of completion. So just one quick announcement. Our next live online workshop starts Saturday, September 26th. It goes for 4 Saturdays, and we cover the 4 key areas for hunter type support. So first session will be life visioning and goal setting. Second session will be time management. Third session will be developing a wellness plan. And the final session will be about creating good support systems. So if you listen all the way through this podcast, at the very end, I will share a little bit more in depth about what to expect. But if you're interested, go to drummerinthegreatmountain.com/workshop. That's drummerinthegreatmountain.com/workshop. The link is also in the description of this podcast episode. Okay, so today's topic is start with the end in mind. So here's the challenge. Hunter types have a tendency to impulsively jump into a project without clearly setting the parameters of what the end result should be. And so we start and we get fired up and we're inspired and we're like, okay, we're doing this. And you start moving forward and you start getting things done. But because you don't have a clear end result defined for yourself, you start to get lost, you get into brain fuzz, the inspiration starts to lag, and you get confused. And because of this, you stop and then you feel overwhelmed. And then you also probably feel a sense of low self-esteem because you're like, oh, it happened again. So this is a really common hunter type challenge. So what's the solution? The solution is starting with the end in mind. So basically state clearly to yourself, what is the end result of this given project, and plan backwards from the intended result. And this is the discipline I've done for myself now for many years, and it has saved me so many times. So this could be for a small project. It could be as simple as like cleaning the house. Like, what does it look like to have this session of house cleaning done? What does that look like? Or just goals for your today's work session. What does it look like to have the thing completed at the end of the day? Or it could be for larger projects. So it could be a music project, a book, plans after graduation. It could be anything. basically the goal is you have the end in mind clearly stated, and then your planning works backwards from that end result. So for those of you who have read Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which I highly recommend, this is habit number 2, and he calls it beginning with the end in mind. And this connects with building the habit of completion. I talk about this a lot on the podcast, and it's the muscle us hunter types really need to build. It's basically, how do we build the process by which we start a project and we complete the project, and we're thinking ahead towards what it looks like, so that when we get lost, we have a clear picture in our mind of what we need to do next. Okay, so the practice of this is pretty simple. Before you're starting any project, whether it's just a day project or it's a longer term creative project or a work project, something that has a little more girth to it that's going to last a couple months, start by clearly defining what it looks like. Sit down with a piece of paper and write out, here's what it looks like for this to be completed, and I'm feeling good about the completion of it. State clearly, what does completion look like? And for us hunter types, this is hard to do. Sometimes it takes us a little time to get ourselves into the headspace where we can really visualize this is what it looks like or feels like to have it complete. You don't have to have everything worked out, but what does it look like to have it done? What's the end result? And if you're confused about the steps you need to take, it's really helpful to just work backwards from the intended result. So if you're like, I don't know where to start on this project, then state the end result and then start going backwards from the end. Go, okay, well, if this is completed, then what's the thing right before I'm just about done? And then just to keep working backwards from the end result. And what you'll find is you'll see things and catch things that you wouldn't have caught any other way. Whereas if you just feel inspired and start moving, the odds are you're just going to get lost. That's the big challenge. So if you're clear about what the end result is, it's like your North Star. You can keep coming back to that and go, no, this is what I'm intending. And this is really helpful when something takes longer than you expect. If you know what it's supposed to look like, whether it's just cleaning the house or a work project, you know what you need to come back to. And if you sat down for even just like a minute or two, if it's a small project, and just wrote out, here's what it looks like to have it completed, you can come back to that and go, okay, that's what I need to do. That's going to feel good to have that done. And that's going to give you a little extra inspiration when you're probably lagging a little bit and feeling like, I don't know if I can keep myself going on this project. So some examples. When I wrote the book, The Drummer in the Great Mountain, I outlined the book first. So I really I took like a month and just mapped out all the chapters and got at least the bullet points of the book done. I used mind mapping for that. And I think one of the biggest things I did is I created the book cover like within a couple months. I created the book cover, and as soon as I had even a rough draft, I sent it in and I got a print of it with the cover. And that really kept me going because I could see it and I could look at it and go, yes, okay, that's what it looked like. And then I found out later, I heard an interview with Dr. Wayne Dyer, and he said he did the exact same thing. He'd asked the publishing company to create the cover for the book right away, and then they'd just give him the flap of the book, so it would wrap around a hardcover book, and he'd grab just another book off the shelf and put the cover around it so he could see it, and he'd set it in front of him. And that's what kept him going, because he'd say like, okay, it's done. There it is. The book is complete. All I need to do is just finish my part of it. So it's a really good mental trick to keep you going when you get stuck. So if it's a smaller project, so let's say it's like cleaning the house, right? It's like organization for us hunter types can be really challenging for some of us, not all of us. Define what it looks like to have it completely clean. What does it feel like in your body to have it clean and organized? I often use this trick a lot with my coaching clients where they're like, oh, my home office is totally a mess. And I'm like, okay, just visualize what it looks like to have it clean and organized. It's already done. Like, what does that look like? And then for this situation, what I often recommend is just like clear everything off your desk right away in like 10 minutes and just find a staging area. Because within 10 minutes, it's clean. It's like you already did it. You can see like that's what it looks like. It's now clean. And then it forces you to then go through the steps to keep it organized and push yourself to, and then you're stuck. You have to fix it. You've kind of boxed yourself in, and now you have to organize things. Otherwise you get a big pile of stuff. So sometimes this may feel pretentious, like you think, oh, well, why should I do this for small projects? But it's a habit you build that helps you when you really need it. If you do it on smaller projects, like a small work project or cleaning the house or something like that, it builds that muscle so that when you have the bigger creative project or something that you really, really care about, you've already built the habit. So if it's a bigger project, you may want to spend a little extra time journaling, visualizing, mind mapping, or talking to someone else and just talk it through and say like, okay, this is even in smaller work projects. You can just go, okay, pull in a coworker and say, can I just talk this through? There's like a lot of steps here and it just helps me. I need about 10 minutes of would you just willing to listen to me? And I'm going to talk it through. And then you can offer that same kind of support for other people. It's helpful to do this so that you get clear about what it looks like. A lot of times when I'm working with my clients and they're talking about work projects that are really challenging, it's because they don't have a clearly defined goal or someone else didn't define it for them. That's really common in the corporate world, is like there's a sort of a hazy goal stated by upper management. And then you're like, okay, what does this look like? And if you don't clearly define it for yourself, you're just lost. You don't know, like you won't know when you're done. And it also leads you to think in terms of, oh, I actually need to pin this person down and figure out what exactly this is. And hopefully some of you are bobbing your heads on this because this is a really common issue. So when you start to do this as a habit, you start to see when other people aren't doing it around you in your work situation, and you can call them on it and say, hey, you know what? That's not clear enough. I actually need clearly defined variables, or else I'm just setting myself up for failure. So we have to be aware that these habits start to transcend our own personal workflow and can positively influence the people around us. So coming back to thinking of maybe a creative project or a business that you want to start, knowing what completion looks like sometimes is the result of you finding examples of what that is. So real world examples. So build your inspiration list. So going back to the book, when I wrote the book, I chose a couple of books that were models for what I wanted to achieve with the book. And the one big one was Julia Cameron's The Artist Way. It just had such an impact and affected so many people, and so many other things have been spawned around that book that I thought, and also I liked the size of the book. I think our Drummer in the Great Mountain's about the same size in terms of just the layout. So that was really helpful because someone already worked out a lot of the bugs already. So starting from scratch with no inspiration is the hardest place to go, especially when you're a creative person. And what I found, especially making a living in the creative arts, that you got to have as many tools in your toolkit as possible. And starting from zero is the worst place to start. So if I'm doing, let's say I'm a graphic designer and I'm designing a project for a client, before I even get started, I want to know exactly what that client likes and what that client does not like. I want to see examples of what they think is a really good end result for their project, so they can say, otherwise they're just like, well, I think it's this, or that doesn't help. You have to drill them. You have to pin it down and go, okay, now what exactly do you like? And when you get those examples, then you have things to work. Then you've got a ground to work from. So in general, starting from zero with no plan and no sense of inspiration and no clear real world examples of what completion looks like in terms of a creative project is almost a recipe for failure. Most people don't do well in that situation. Okay, so I think that covers the basics. So I've put together 4 questions to ask yourself when you're getting started planning a project. So question number 1 is, what does it look like to have this project complete? Visualize for yourself, what does it look like to have this project totally completed? Number 2, how will you feel when this project is completed? What does it feel like in your body to have this project fully done in a very satisfying way? Question number 3 is, in planning this project, what does it look like to work backwards from the end result? And underneath this, ask yourself, thinking about this, does this yield up any milestones to hit along the way? Also, are there any insights that you need to note for yourself as you're thinking from the end backwards? And the last question is, can I assemble some examples of what completion looks like in terms of this project? What is my list of potential inspiration that I can look at as completed forms of the type of project that I'm intending to do? Okay, so your challenge for this week, if you choose to accept it, is to, in as many ways as you can, practice planning with the end in mind. So in everyday situations, start to look at, okay, how do I visualize the end result first and then work backwards? Start with smaller projects, but then if you have a bigger project that you're wanting to do, this is a really great time to practice this particular topic, starting with the end in mind. Go through the podcast, maybe listen to this episode a few times, and go through those last questions and practice doing that in as many ways as you can so you can start building that habit. So I hope that was helpful. As a reminder, our next Alive online workshop starts Saturday, September 26th. We go 4 Saturdays, if you've never taken this before, and we cover the 4 key ingredients for having a stable, balanced hunter-type life. So the first session is life visioning and goal setting. So that's where we're building that habit that we just talked about, which is we're sitting down and setting clear goals for different key areas of our life in terms of health, work, relationships, finances. It goes to what we just discussed. How do you define the goal for yourself so that you can move towards it? So that'll be the first session, and it will be live. We'll be doing it in the session. So there's not a lot of homework in this workshop. I try to do it all live, and I find that's best for us hunter types. Second session will be time management, getting your time management system in place, figuring out how to use either a planner or your digital time management system, and specifically, how do you use a time management system that works for being a hunter type. Spend a lot of time studying this, and we've gone through a lot of workshops. And at this point, this has really been refined down to things that I've seen very, very useful and quickly adopted by people who join in the workshop. Third session will be developing a wellness plan. How do you take care of yourself as a hunter type with nutrition and exercise, and how do you keep with that plan? So that'll be the third session, developing a good wellness plan as a hunter type. And then finally, the last session is creating good support systems. How do you keep yourself going when you get stuck? How do you build in those support systems that keep those positive habits in place so that you can really thrive? So the dates will be September 26th, October 3rd, October 10th, and October 17th. For more information, just go to drummerinthegreatmountain.com/workshop. That's drummerinthegreatmountain.com/workshop. And the link is also in the description of this podcast. Okay, so that's it. So until next time, be well. Thanks for joining us. If you'd like to learn more about the book, The Drummer in the Great Mountain, visit drummerinthegreatmountain.com. To join us on social media, click the links at the top of the homepage. Help us spread the word. We're a small press and reviews really help. If you've been enjoying the podcast or the book, consider writing a review on iTunes, Amazon, Goodreads, or your podcast app. If you're new to the podcast and want to quickly get up to speed on the concepts we discuss, check out our free 5-day mini course. Visit drummerinthegreatmountain.com/mini course. If there's a topic you'd like us to cover on future episodes, we'd love to hear from you. please send us an email at info@drummerinthegreatmountain.com.